Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy, where we highlight the top giving news, stories, and the power of crypto for good. Nick Mikhalevsky, Senior Sales Manager here at The Giving Block, and excited to have my colleague Pietro Moran back in the studio this week. Pietro, good to see you.
Good to see you, Nick. Super excited. Another really busy week. I mean, it just feels like January is off to a hot start, but super pumped for today's episode. I think the content is going to be amazing. And yeah, really happy to be kicking off the year in a really strong way and super pumped to see what kind of special things we have in store.
Yeah, well, 2025 has been off to a lightning start, and we're super excited and very fortunate to be joined by a longstanding client, World Vision USA. And today we are very privileged to have Elijah and Reed from World Vision USA. So I'll turn it over to you guys, and maybe Reed, we'll start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself and your role at World Vision?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I for what you guys are saying, I can't believe it's almost January's almost over. Still trying to wrap my head around that. But Reed Slattery, I'm the National Director for World Vision's US programs. So I oversee all of our programming that happens in the US. A big part of that is our disaster relief response, which we'll get more into later today. So thanks for having me. It's really great to be here with you guys.
Yeah, Elijah, over to you.
Yeah, my name's Elijah Aaron Jerjerian, and I'm on the corporate engagement team. Reed Slattery and I work in tandem along with the rest of our corporate engagement team to procure about 250 million a year in product donation and distribution. So we've been working together on all the disaster response and even the consistent needs of our US programs.
Man, fantastic. Well, we of course talk about, crypto and crypto philanthropy. And I guess a good place to start, and probably a question that will, continue to ask more and more guests as we continue to have more folks on the podcast, is love to hear, your a little bit of like a personal journey with crypto. How'd you guys first encounter it? And, how'd you guys get into the space? How'd you guys get exposed to it?
My journey started about 5 years ago. As I look back, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, so March of 2020. It was with Dogecoin, right? So kind of what's going on here? This thing's going through the roof. I threw some money in there, and it did pretty well. And then, kind of before the bottom fell out, I did more research and following different influencers online, and then shifted a lot of those funds to more reliable Bitcoin and Ethereum, and so holding some of those, and always keeping an eye on the new coins and new technology and stuff coming out, and definitely probably more enthusiastic about it. Definitely not an expert, but a lot of excitement around the space.
We all come down the rabbit hole in some way. And yeah, mine was in 2017. I was a senior at Azusa Pacific University studying international business. It was my second semester. I had about 12 credits or less. Senioritis was fully intact. I was in a Bio 101 class, scouring Reddit threads for investment advice, and I came across Ethereum and the cryptocurrency landscape, and I was immediately hooked. Programmable money, very innovative, the oil of the internet. I was just hooked, and that sent me down, the ICO rabbit hole and everything that went there, and I've just stayed in touch with the space, and it's really fun to be able to be on this side of it now, and be a part of World Vision and digging into it with Reed.
That's amazing. You're kind of speaking my language, Elijah. That's almost exactly to a T like how I discovered crypto. It's like back in school, still trying to figure it out. Maybe a little downtime, not as many credits on the course load, and you're like, let's see, let's think about the future. Where should we park a little money? And then down the rabbit hole you go. I mean, I would love to get your guys' perspective, right? Zooming back out. And Reed, you mentioned you feel like you were a bit of a newbie still, but like 5 years in the space, and you might still feel that way. I mean, it kind of speaks to like the learning curve that it takes to really wrap your arms around this asset class and just all the various communities and how people operate, or like what's the lingo online. So I guess my question is like a two-parter here, but one, like if you could at a super high level just let the audience know what World Vision is up to and just kind of your mission statement, what you guys are really pursuing in terms of as a cause. And then I guess secondly, would be really curious, because we have a lot of nonprofit centric folks that listen to the podcast, and would love to understand maybe like how you view the challenges and then also like opportunities of being and participating in crypto. Like, it's a bit of a long-winded question, but just curious how like, one, what are you guys up to so people can understand like maybe how it's analogous to what they're doing? And then what do you see as like big benefits, opportunities, and then maybe some of the challenges of like going from newbie to like, hey, I'm comfortable enough to really start getting in here.
Absolutely. World Vision, most people know us for our work around the world. So we work in over 100 different countries around the world. We're the largest non-governmental organization provider of clean water. We do health, we do disaster relief. So we're actually celebrating our 75th year anniversary this year. So that's a big deal for us. Speaks to the longevity of our programming. But domestically, we do a lot of work as well. And it's not as well known. We kind of, some of that's by design, some of it's just, for whatever reasons, we come alongside other organizations and really prop them up. So we partner with over 3,000 organizations across the country, and those are food banks, Title I schools, churches. They're serving in communities that are urban or rural or First Nations communities. And we try to come alongside and figure out what are the needs. So we're sending in school supplies to different Title I schools. We're sending in personal care and toys to churches that are doing outreaches in their community. And then a big part of that, and increasingly, is just the disaster relief arm here in the U.S. So it seems like there's more frequent and really intense storms that are hitting, and just a long road of recovery. So we're seeing that in North Carolina. We're just trying to wrap our heads around it in Los Angeles, right? We're kind of in that immediate relief phase, but it's going to be a long, long response there. So that's a little bit of what we do here domestically.
Yeah, and I guess maybe for the sake of kind of jumping straight to that, I mean, with everything that's going on in LA, I mean, we'd love to know what are you guys doing on the ground, and how has crypto played a role in that?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by just a little bit of what we're doing, current state there. It's been a massive response. One thing that was unique about this response too, I've been with World Vision for 20 years now. I've been to probably close to 20 different disaster zones over those years. Uh, and usually when we come in, right, the storm or the activity is done, right? The hurricane has passed through, the floods have receded. But here it's like we're on the ground and these fires are still raging, right? They're out of control, not 0% contained. And Elijah and other staff are on the ground and they're getting evacuation notices. And there's just this heaviness, right? With everybody, people that have been impacted, but people that are not sure what's coming next. And so that really created some degrees of difficulties at the beginning. But we got into what we normally do is we work through our pre-position partner network. So we have a lot of partners in LA. We started sending loads down immediately. And I think within 24 hours after the fires really kicked off there in the Palisades fire, we had a truck backing up to the Dream Center and unloading relief supplies, and they were getting them out. And then we kind of branched out and said, okay, where else do we have partners? We got some partners over in Pasadena and Altadena, and let's get some stuff over there. And so from the start of it until now, we've sent in about 30 truckloads of relief supplies. And that's everything from, diapers and personal care items. Folks are staying in a shelter. They might just need to take a shower. So they might just need a bar of soap or some shampoo, food, water, N95 mask. We're kind of in a space right now where we're starting to pivot and meet, now it's air purifiers that are being asked for as folks are coming back to their homes or in a new location. They need several air purifiers. We're getting a lot of requests for, furniture for temporary housing and bedding and towels. So we really try to keep up with those needs as they change. And then long term, and we're not there yet, but we will, at the right point, we'll shift into more building materials. So our goal will be to hopefully be on the ground for a couple of years and really go deep in certain communities. So we can't, do everything, but maybe there's a neighborhood in Altadena and there's a community coalition group coming around. How can World Vision be a part of that and bring in some of those rebuilding materials?
It's been a whirlwind, like Rita's been saying, because those fires were still active as we were responding. And there's panic, there's uncertainty. But I've seen the Los Angeles community become very tight knit and want to help one another. I had family that was directly affected by the fires in Eaton, a cousin who lost a home. We lost our Armenian school that we all grew up going to. It was there for 45 years. And a lot of the community in Altadena that has lost their homes, we know a lot of them personally, or at least one ring removed. So it was a very personal disaster. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, but World Vision, along with our partners, have been pivotal to help those in need. So I have the honor of being on location. So I get to drive and go to all of our distribution sites whenever I can. 10 miles in Los Angeles could be an hour plus depending on the traffic. But if it's close enough and the timing works in the schedule, I have the ability to go and be a part of those distributions too. So that's been very fulfilling in this role.
Yeah, and for folks that are listening, I mean, we have our LA Emergency Response Fund that we've set up. We're doing those donation matches 1-to-1. We hit our $1 million goal, but we're not stopping there. And we'll make sure to put links into the show notes so that the kinds of work that you guys are doing. I mean, you know, it's pretty incredible to see, and the crypto community always rallies, especially in times like this. So, to the extent that, we'll share as many of those links so people can know, you know, how those donations can go to send, those critical supplies that you guys need.
Thanks for doing that. That match, it's just amazing. And it sounds like you're saying it's going to continue above $1 million. And I know you guys pushed it out to January 31st. And I would just encourage all your listeners, if you want to help that way, go to that link. I think I saw World Vision listed, but there's a lot of good nonprofits there. So you can find a partner that lines with whatever your vision for the response is. And yeah, thank you guys for doing that. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and I guess this is sort of indicative of, I guess, a little bit of a a change in how generosity gets to where it's needed. I mean, can you guys talk about how World Vision has started to embrace this move into the digital space, and maybe some of the challenges that you guys uncovered? I mean, how did you guys get World Vision to kind of go in this direction?
I know we've been partnering with the Giving Block for a few years now, and I know we've seen some sizable donations come through. 6, 7 figure donations of crypto that folks have just so generously sent our way, and so I think that has really sparked an energy within World Vision and kind of a curiosity. So we try to, as an organization, just really stay innovative, that kind of posture. And so Elijah could probably speak a little bit more to this, but he and I are actually on a team, an internal team, to kind of really keep our ears to the ground and figure out how we can do more in this space. So we're excited to continue to learn and then bring those learnings and integrate that into our operations.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And just to go off that too, I back in 2017 when I was working for World Vision International, I was working in the corporate team, the procurement team, and right upstairs was our treasury team. And I was very new to cryptocurrency, but I already knew like here's a frictionless, borderless, non-permissionable currency, and we're transacting in 100 different currencies at World Vision, maybe less, but a lot of currencies that we're swapping in and out of. And it just immediately clicked. I was like, I need to send this to the treasury team. They need to get on this. Well, I was new. I couldn't articulate. The tech wasn't really up to date there. 7 years down the line, the tech has really changed. I think there's multifaceted gleanings and innovations that can come from the crypto space. But in philanthropy specifically, you're looking at a new target demographic of people who want to be generous, 20, 30-year-olds, late 30s, early 40s, but it's a demographic that is definitely passionate, and they're asset heavy, asset rich. I mean, I'll talk personally. My cash flows are terrible. Most of my wealth is in assets, right? And I want to give in a as frictionless of a way as possible. And we actually have an internal task force that Reed, alongside a couple other people, are pushing out World Vision to really be able to pivot in this direction and to welcome people into this space.
100%. I was actually, the second you were introducing yourself and your background, I was thinking about this. Like, with the educational background, I mean, studying business and then also kind of being at the intersection of crypto kind of before it was like right on the cusp of that mainstream adoption. Like, I just want to double click on that with you, Elijah, really quickly. Like, a lot of folks that we work with, they see the opportunity to obviously accept a different type of asset class or engage that new donor demographic. But I'm curious to understand, like, especially with what World Vision does and the type of like real logistical work that you guys actually have to bring to these areas. Like, are there any unlocks that you see, digital assets or crypto like bringing in terms of maybe like the efficiency side or things in the sense that like maybe it's just making business operations easier or is money moving faster? Like, how do you guys see that on the ground as opposed to, two folks here in a podcast studio that like think it's happening and talk to folks, but would love to hear your story on that if you guys are seeing anything.
That is a very technical question. I'm not a subject matter expert in our programs, but I know that we have multiple branches, whether it be water and sanitation or even our microfinance portfolio. Our microfinance portfolio is large in size and well diversified in many different countries. So even Reed and I were talking about, what does it look like to do money voucher programs in a digital fashion, or do microfinance loans on a blockchain, right? Because you're injecting loan liquidity, microfinance liquidity into the hardest to reach communities, mostly in rural agricultural communities, and they have these savings groups, chamas or sakas, or there's a different term for each culture, but they just pool together and they work this kind of loan shared savings system. I think it could be very interesting to explore that, and I think many cryptocurrency communities are exploring it and innovating themselves. So now it's a matter of proof of concepts and then scale.
Yeah, and along with what you guys have done in the past and how you're looking into 2025, is there anything that you're excited about downrange? Is there anything that's different in 2025? Things that you're excited to continue pursuing, kind of in this digital asset arena?
I think another thing Elijah and I were talking a little bit about, he hit on this a little bit, but in disaster relief, one of the best modalities to get resources to folks is through cash programming. And so World Vision does a lot of it internationally. So you come into a different disaster zone and you want to stimulate the local economy, right? And so you don't want to bring in a bunch of product. You want to get them going as much as they can. And so we do some of that in the US as well. Not quite as much, but, and it's usually through gift cards. And so, there's challenges, right? Gift cards, then you have to go to a location and there might not be one close by, or there's fees, a lot of fees involved and restrictions. But I think that is a breakthrough area that we could focus on because, we're giving hygiene kits and diapers, right? But somebody might need help with a prescription and they need, cash to go do that, or they might need, help paying their rent or whatever it is. So I don't know if that would come this year, but I do think that's something that hopefully will get more clarity, and NGOs will get, more kind of standards on that in the next couple of years.
Would love to actually double click on that if possible. I mean, just to position it and really hit home. I know the initial response is product donation, right? And there is a phase 2 and 3 to that. But money and money donations are versatile and you could use it for way more, right? It's not fixed. It provides a lot of optionality to a nonprofit, but also to a recipient. So you see a lot of nonprofits now voicing communication in Los Angeles specifically. We do not need more product donation. You are well intentioned, but it's actually inundating our distribution sites, is actually making it more difficult for us to operate. And I believe the statistic, and this needs to be vetted, is about 80% of the things donated in a disaster end up in a landfill because there's either a mismatch of quality, mismatch of need. So really the most important thing and most impactful thing you could do is really to give money. And I think the Giving Block giving that $1 million match, I mean, that's music to my ears. Every time I hear a match, I'm like, I'm going to give. I wasn't even going to give, but now it's matched. So I feel like I'm doing more, right? Frankly, everyone loves a match. And I think it's beautiful that y'all are doing that.
That's actually a really interesting point. As somebody who's not on the ground like you folks, and recognizing kind of some of the struggles and different strategies. I know you talk about that sort of like strategically phased approach of like, you know, maybe start with some physical donations, but then the reality is you got to start kind of getting the gears of the local economy churning again. And like liquidity is the biggest thing, right? Kind of, Elijah, what you're saying with the cash, component being super versatile. I mean, that's something I think, is certainly enlightening to me, but really interesting to understand. Like crypto is kind of funny like that because people joke about it. It's like just internet money, but in reality, it's like the most effective thing. It's kind of what you're saying, because you could turn that into goods and services that you're buying from wherever it is locally, and actually helping folks like grow sustainably, and not just saying, hey, here's like a used car, but you can only use that for so many things. You can't eat it. You can't turn it into, a shower or whatever. So that's super interesting to me. And I think what you guys do is extremely impactful, for helping educate folks in the space to see, like, how crypto, even sometimes when it's a meme, is actually quite powerful because you can turn it into whatever you need it to. Um, but so there's actually a question baked in here, I promise. So, just regarding like the sort of like, I would say, general mood sentiment around the world today, around the philanthropy space, around just, I think, the news cycle in general, right? I think we can all get a little bit like battered down with like, you know, there's a catastrophe here and then there, and then like it could be a little bit pessimistic. We're always doom scrolling, whatever. Like, I'm curious, like, when you talk to your potential donors, when you talk to folks who come and ask like how they can help, how do you build that sense of optimism, thinking about, how we can help in the ways that we're all able to, like, kind of, um, and maybe this is a question for you, Reed, but just, encouraging generosity and not making it one of those things that feels like a chore necessarily. Like, how do you engage on that front? Because I think that's probably universal to all of our nonprofit listeners. They just want to keep, you know, not saying like the good vibes up, but how do you engage with folks, and how do you make, maybe technology part of the equation or conversation?
That's a great question. And you're right on the money. We call it donor fatigue, right? When there's multiple disasters, in the US back to back, and different crises around the world, it's hard to go back to the same donors and say, hey, I know you gave last month to North Carolina, but we need you to step up again. And so, I think we do a lot of it through relationships. I think relationships are key to everything in life, right? And so just having those relationships with high net worth individuals, or our mass audience, or corporations like Elijah works with, we really try to kind of meet their needs all year round. So that when we come to them with specific ask in LA, it's like, okay, yeah, we can help you out here. You guys have been helping us with these other inventory backups, 6 months ago, right? Or you guys have gotten us some feedback that really helped us with some marketing campaign that we were doing. So that's some of the techniques we use, is just to be a really good partner, be a really good business solution for corporations and others like that. I think using social media has been a huge key and tool for us, right? Because I think the other reason you can get folks to give sometimes is just a connection, right? And so we use a lot of social media to get stuff out real time. I think folks, if they're watching the 5 o'clock news and they're feeling overwhelmed, but then they go on Instagram and they see a World Vision story, like, oh, hey, they're down there doing something. And so we've gotten pretty good, our storytelling capabilities, and just really trying to pump that out. And I think that also, it connects with donors in a different way, right? Like a couple of years ago, there was a fires in Lahaina, and those were still responding over there, and those were pretty tragic. They weren't on the same scale as Los Angeles, but they were pretty devastating. And we had an overwhelming response from local donors in the Pacific Northwest, where we're headquarters. And I don't. This is just kind of haven't done any hard research on this, but a lot of folks vacation over there, right? And a lot of people were like, the town, or the big, the tree, and they could picture their vacation, and it was devastating to see that gone. So I think that personal connection is really helpful as well, of pulling at people's heartstrings. But donor fatigue is real.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. I mean, um, what we've seen is that we did a sort of crypto donor AMA during one of our small groups at the Giving Block, and one of the key things that some of the crypto donors said was, be active and visible on social media, like that's how we find you, that's how we see you, that's how we get engaged, that's how we get excited. And even just the storytelling that you guys just went through here on the podcast about, like, here's, like, in these situations, here's what actually is most impactful. That's super helpful, and I think just gets people really excited. And Elijah, like I said, like when there's a match, I mean, man, does that just like lubricate people's excitement and generosity. But that was a really cool thing that we heard from directly from crypto donors themselves. So for folks that are listening to this, it sounds like you guys are really capitalizing on that, and that's a great learning. So it's really encouraging to hear that you guys have seen that is a great way to connect with folks. I guess you know we've talked about what World Vision's done, some of the things you're excited about, what kind of like what's going on in LA. Is there any? I want to kind of give it to you guys. Like, is there anything that we haven't asked about? I mean, is there something you want to make sure? Hey, let's give the audience something to think about, or here's a really cool area that World Vision's doing some work in. Want to give you guys the floor to educate folks who are watching too.
Just the long-term nature of this response, right? Because kind of going back to the other question, right? Donor fatigue is real. And then I think, we all have short-term memories and we kind of move on to the next. But it is going to be such a long haul here in Los Angeles to rebuild these neighborhoods. If you look at the shots from Altadena, we saw some of the neighborhoods. I was down there last week or so with Elijah, and it's just every home, and it's just going to be such a long process. And so I would just encourage your listeners, to just stay engaged as much as you can. The match is such a great way for people to really stretch their charitable contribution, and then do your research, right? There's so many good organizations out there, and they all focus on different things, right? Some focus on immediate housing or meals. I think one of our sweet spots is that long term. We really try to stay for a couple of years, and sometimes other organizations they pick up and they move on to something else, but we're there walking alongside with trusted partners, really trying to help these folks rebuild their homes. And so, that's something you folks want to learn more about. They can go to World Vision's website and learn and jump in with us there. We'd appreciate it.
I would say, touching on the water portion of World Vision, that's a huge arm of World Vision's development. And we're, like Reed had mentioned earlier, we're the leading non-governmental water project implementer in the world. And we bring clean water on average to a human being every 10 seconds. And a lot of people don't know that. And I actually came to World Vision because of that fact. My life was changed when I was 21, when I learned about the global water crisis. It affects about 800 million people in the world, 1 in 10, and they don't have basic water access. They have to walk on average about 3 miles, usually women and girls, and they are going and getting dirty water that's actually killing them. So Charity Water, who is actually one of our greatest partners, we are one of their implementing partners. Scott Harrison was the CEO there for a very long time, and now he's transitioned out. We have a close relationship with them, and he and his team were the ones that sent me on this journey. And now I'm on the implementation side, not me personally, but World Vision is on the implementation side of water projects. And I think that's one of the coolest things in the world. Lastly, I will say, remain hopeful and really audit what you consume, because our former CEO, Richard Stearns, wrote a book called Hole in Our Gospel. And it's been one of the most pivotal books that I've ever read in my life. And in it, he mentions a story about a sea, a shoreline full of starfish, and a person, laughing at this person that's going one by one and picking up one starfish and throwing it into the sea, and kind of mocking him for how, hopeless that situation is. You're not going to save every one of them, right? And the person turns around and says, well, I just saved this one, and then throws it into the sea. And I think if we all have that posture, it really breaks that black pill mentality of we're all doomed. Because frankly, I don't want my generation to be doomed. I live in this generation. I live in a generation that's going to inherit the present and the future. And I think we have a moral mandate to be hopeful and to be people that have vision. And World Vision is a big part of that.
I think that's inspiring words, and I think a great parable to those of us who maybe are like terminally online and always just seeing maybe the bad things that pop into your news feed. It's like it's such a great reminder, right? It's always important to have some optimism towards the future, and like you said, even if you're making one small contribution where it might seem like the problem is much bigger than one person can solve, it doesn't mean that that is a negligible contribution, right? I think that's a phenomenal reminder across, I'd say everyone who's trying to make an impact in the world. I mean, we talk about crypto a lot on this podcast, but that is one small piece of the puzzle, right? Like technology can enable and help folks, but it's ultimately like a group effort and, a lot of those small contributions that build up in the aggregate. I think, kind of to round it out from my side, I'm curious, like maybe it's a good segue based on what you just said. In that spirit of optimism and being hopeful, is there anything that you guys maybe can leave our listeners with in terms of technology maybe creating a more equitable world or a better place that creates the vision for the world that we want to see? I know, Elijah, maybe we'll start with you because you were right hot off that comment there about your generation and wanting to see that for the future. Is there anything you're excited or hopeful for that you want to share with the folks here listening?
I would say just keep innovating, keep being hopeful, keep creating technology that is close to the end user and the people that you want to serve. There's a lot of innovation happening in the world, not only from the West, but in the global South. And I think oftentimes I've had a perspective that I bring the best solution to the table. And what I love about World Vision is that we are a global organization. We work in 100 countries with field offices in many of those countries that have the boots on the ground and the local hires to be able to do that work and do it well in a cultural context that they understand and be able to serve their brothers and sisters. So I think having a humble posture, but also an eager posture to change the status quo for the betterment of, the future that we get to inherit. I think from a sound money perspective, that's a whole nother macroeconomic rabbit hole. But people need to have their cost of living um, be less volatile. And I think I don't want to say a crime against humanity. I think that's a very, very loaded phrase, but I think it is one of the largest headwinds we have as a society, and it's causing a lot of issues. So as we continue to innovate technologically through Bitcoin and other means, making sure that the people that need to be lifted out of poverty do so, they get to engage in the beautiful social privileges that we get to have in a lot of our Western countries.
There's so much stuff that gives me hope around technology, and whether it's just the digital space and how we're able to leverage social media for good in these times. And I think you guys kind of mentioned it's just a nice break from doom scrolling when you do see communities coming together. And so I do feel like there's a lot of opportunities in disaster, and I think there's a lot of space for technology, right? Like there's we talked about these storms and more frequent and more severe, right? But that there's also opportunities to, bring solutions, either to mitigate that or, in response time. And think about North Carolina, and we partnered with some folks that were bringing in clean water, right? Their situation was really challenging, several months without clean water. And so we were partnering with NGOs that, do clean water around the world, and to see some of the technology that they had and how they were purifying, thousands of gallons of water each day to serve the community. That gave me hope. And so, yeah, I'm just always love the way that the community rallies together during these challenging times.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to highlight, the power of crypto for good. It's sort of the theme for this whole podcast, and certainly think you've given the listeners and even the other nonprofits that are on the sidelines that hear about some of the work that's being done in the space, giving them confidence to sort of take this back and internalize it and see how there are ways that they could open up some new doors to their impact, their capabilities, their people, their teams, their effectiveness. So we love highlighting all of these great experiences that you guys have had. And I guess to to close things out, I mean, if people are listening to this and they're getting to the end here and they think like, I just want to learn more about it, how can they connect with you guys? How can they connect with World Vision?
Definitely, I would say if you want to learn more about World Vision, probably go to worldvision.org. Our landing page is all focused on LA wildfire response. And so you can find ways to, get engaged there and donate or participate other ways. Social channels, right? The World Vision USA on Instagram, I think is a really good way to plug in. And then, Elijah and I'll pass it to you, Elijah. We do a lot on LinkedIn. So both of our profiles, just our names on LinkedIn. And so that's a good way to keep up with what's happening in our space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm also on Twitter, sometimes too often, X as it is now called. I'm on there, and you can find me there. I love engaging with the community and learning more, and sharing hope. I think that's very important. Um, it's not about the Lamborghinis and the Rolexes, right? It can be, but it shouldn't be the focal point. And I think y'all have positioned yourselves as a platform and an avenue for people to really do good and to make change in the world. And I think oftentimes people just are looking for that invitation. They don't know what they don't know. And we extend a hand and we invite. And if they say yes, that's wonderful. Come join the party. And if not, that's okay. We'll get you down the line somehow.
I love that. That is a great place to wrap things up, and we'll include everything in the show notes. When this episode comes out, we're recording this, a couple days in advance. There will still be some time to continue to make those donations. That match is still live, so we'll put those links into the show notes as well, and of course, follow us on socials. We're going to be continuing to get as many of those donations in there, and of course, encourage everybody to check out the great work that World Vision is doing on the ground and in many locations around the globe. So, on behalf of everybody here at the Giving Block, Reed, Elijah, thanks so much for coming on today.